Hi, everyone. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe one of you can comment on the YouTube channel and let me know if you can hear me properly. That would be very helpful. I'm going to have a look now. I'm trying to figure out the technical aspects before I start doing my presentation. So if one of you can just tell me on the YouTube channel if this is working. Joss, Tutu, Vesna, Wendy, Kimari, you guys please let me know. Ooh, here, very good. Excellent. So let me start. I see that you are 5 of you watching and 12 of you waiting. So I'm very happy to see that a lot of you have joined today. This is really appreciated that you make the time to be here and to learn. Today, this is the 3rd webinar, and this is, you also had cluster calls, 3 sub-regional cluster calls. So this webinar will be the last one in your preparation phase. So you've been all building your skills on social media, digital impact, how to collect votes online and offline with my colleagues from the UN SDG Action Campaign. And today we're going to focus on a very important aspect. It's about partnerships and funding opportunities for My World 2030 activities. This is extremely important because we're going to talk about a lot of things today. It's going to be quite a lot of information for you to digest. Everything I'm sharing today will be shared with you. All the documents, all the hyperlinks. So no need to worry about writing down the website. I have also written up some notes for you. So everything, the presentation itself, and maybe some additional tips will be shared with you. So don't worry about struggling to find the website, or we'll make it easy for you. So everything will be shared, especially on the Facebook group. So I'm Nadine. Let me have a look at the second slide for you. Today's presentation is going to focus on a few things, but first I wanted to present myself. I'm Nadine. I work for the UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub. I am the civil society and youth engagement expert, and I work specifically in the context of the 2030 agenda. So I've been working for UNDP for a long, long time. It's been since 2011, first in the civil society team. So I was in the partnerships team, and then working specifically on policy and civic engagement, drafting UNDP's global strategies on civil society and civic engagement. And I've joined the Bangkok Regional Hub about 3 years ago, first in the youth team, and now with Hani in the SDG team. And my colleagues Chi and Chen also are part of this SDG team. We are the ones managing your program in partnership with the SDG Action Campaign and with UNV. My specific expertise today is very valuable because you're going to hear about a range of things that I've learned over the years. I've worked with governments, at an embassy in India a long time ago, 2004, 2005. I've worked with a lot of regional and global organizations, either with the UN, 7 years now, or with civil society organizations. I also work with local think tanks and a lot of grassroots organizations, especially in Bosnia. So, and of course, I've mentioned in my slide here, I'm also an academic. I'm a professor. I teach in Cambodia, in Phnom Penh at the Royal University for Law and Economics. So I hope today my slides will be helpful to you. I'm going to focus on a few things today. What are UN partnership principles? What is the ideal situation? What is the UN supposed to do? How are we supposed to engage? This will explain a lot to you, I think, about how you engage with the UN and what we're supposed to do and how we can partner together. I wanted to tell you also about what about the concept of partnerships in the 2030 agenda. There are lots of references to civil society and to youth engagement in the 2030 agenda, and this is something you can mention to people when you meet them, when your government representatives, especially UN colleagues and so on. I'm going to tell you more about stakeholder analysis, how to identify who to partner with, what kind of partners are there out there, who can you partner with, and in what ways. Then I'm going to give you some tips about yourselves, understanding your own added value, and understanding what are partnerships with potential, how to know where to put your time and effort. And this is very important when you do partnerships because it can be very time consuming and very stressful. to manage too many partnerships. So you have to be selective, you have to be smart, you have to be analytic. And I'm going to give you some tools to do that in very simple ways. A few tips also on fundraising do's and don'ts. So good practices and also bad practices. I will try to think about personal experiences when, experiences of failures where maybe we missed the mark a little bit. And then I'm going to give you very practically 2 lists of where to find opportunities, what are the exact websites and the Facebook groups that you can join and get the information sent to you automatically. So you don't have to always be on the lookout. You can set up newsletters and get the information sent to you. And the last slide will be about where to build your skills. I'm going to give you a link, a bunch of links with toolkits, a bunch of links with webinars online by other organizations, civil society mostly, and UN, where you're going to be able to, after this webinar, hopefully study the material I will send you, and then take other webinars and try to deepen your knowledge. Because in 1 hour today, we won't have time to really go into very much detail. What are the good practices to write a funding proposal? What are the items that should be listed? Good examples of like public speaking skills, how to present yourself and be, inspirational and motivate your partners and so on. So today it's an overview. Hopefully some of it will be targeted and useful and interesting and be useful to you in your practical day-to-day activism. So that's the goal. So before I start the presentation, I will go back to the YouTube and check if everything is fine, if you can hear me properly. Let's have a look. If anyone can tell me if you can hear me and if I can start my presentation, please let me know. All right, can you hear me properly? Can I start? Presentation, question mark. Oh, I see Christina is here. Welcome, Christina. I hope if you have comments in the chat, don't hesitate to add. And if you have specific questions, I'll be trying to answer those as well. Excellent. So if it's working well, let me start today's presentation. We're going to start first by looking at UN partnership principles. So these are principles that I've listed here that have been accepted by the UN Interagency Working Group on Civil Society in New York. I was a member of that group for 4 years, and I was part of the group who designed those principles. It supposedly must be adopted by every UN agency. You had representatives from ILO, UNFPA, UNICEF, UNDP, of course, UNV, all of the major UN agencies, and most of them are actually based in New York, were part of designing those principles. So let's have a look at them a little bit. This is what the UN should strive for. Joint agenda setting. That means that basically the UN is supposed to have partnerships, especially with civil society. Civil society means the entire diversity of civil society actors, including youth, including LGBT, including people from marginalized groups, the entire broad spectrum of actors that are not the state and not the market. So joint agenda setting means that the UN is supposed to meet and have built consensus with other actors. So when you meet with UN representatives, they're supposed to meet you halfway. It's not just the UN saying things are going to be this way and you have to do it. There should be an open ear, and for them to really be receptive to your demands and to your needs as well. Co-convening is also a big principle, at least in my work as a civil society focal point I've tried to implement in every project that I've led in the past 7 years. Co-convening means we draft the design, the agenda, the list of speakers, the sequencing of speakers together. It's not the UN, again, choosing because there's this imbalance of power. So you have to be respectful of that imbalance of power, and you're supposed to do it jointly. It is co-creation, co-ideation, and not one-way partnership, not top to bottom. It should be a two-way relationship. Respecting independence is the third principle that I wanted to tell you about today. That means that the UN should be respectful of the civil society, the youth, and the activists and the leaders that they're engaging with, that you have your own agendas, that you have your own mandates, that you have your own objectives, that you have your own budgets, you have your own timelines. So There's no interference. The UN is not supposed to tell you how to do your work. You are independent and you can choose how you would like to work. Of course, in reality, it's not always easy. Sometimes the UN will not be so happy about this, but you have to try. As long as you are respectful and polite and make a case, explain why you have a certain position, it should be just fine. Accommodation of dissent is another important one. If any of you has taken part in any regional meetings or global meetings, I've seen in your bios that you have, be it at the regional or sub-regional level. A lot of you have been like members of ASEAN or Asia-Pacific-wide meetings. You will see that not everybody agrees around the table. And, the UN, one of the principles that we're supposed to promote is diversity of opinion. Accommodation of dissent means we don't have to all agree. We can agree to disagree. We have to listen to each other, be respectful. This applies to how you partner with all your partners. You can meet with private sector partners, you can meet with academia, you can meet with think tanks, and you may not have the same approach. What you have to think about is, beyond independence and dissent, is commonalities, areas where there's overlap, strategically thinking, where you can actually find common sense. So consensus building is a very, very important, it's a powerful tool that you guys should use when you engage with your partners. Impartiality and diversity in approach. I think I mentioned just diversity, the broad range of civil society. We cannot just engage with elite, educated, capital-based civil society and youth groups. The program that we are on right now is designed in this way. You're not all based in your capital cities. A lot of you are also in provinces. It was done on purpose so that there is a diversity of voices. When you are an urban young person, you cannot represent the needs and the desires and the demands from a rural person who doesn't have education. So we try to have a variety of profiles as advocates, and this is a strength. This is something that I will mention later as an added value. So when you go talk to partners, you should talk about this. Say that in each country or among all the 50 SDG advocates, there's a big diversity, and that makes you representative. That's really one added value for you, and you have to emphasize it at all costs. The principle of impartiality, that means that the UN cannot choose sides. Ideally, we give space and we create a seat at the table for everyone, and ideally, we give the same amount of time for speaking to everyone. So there's that principle of impartiality is related to equality. It's a very important one for the UN. We don't favor any religion over another. We don't favor any type of partner over another. Of course, in reality, again, there are imbalances of power that are quite powerful and destructive. So the principles and the reality sometimes don't match, but, these are principles that we strive for, and therefore, they are our guiding light. The last one is very important. It's about transparency, access to information, and disclosure. There is a big demand from citizens to hold their governments accountable, but also to hold the UN accountable. The UN is based with member states, and one big principle is that we're supposed to be transparent and accountable. So the way we disperse funds, or the way we spend them, the way we partner, is supposed to be transparent. If there are favoritism, if we kleptocracy, if there's some kind of preferences for certain groups over others, it's going to be very problematic for the UN. So this last principle of transparency has been implemented by UNDP very, very seriously, and many other agencies. But a little bit of a self-promotion, UNDP received the Transparency Index #1 position several years in a row, from 2014 to 2017, because we published everything that is internal to UNDP. All our projects, all our partners, all the numbers, everything is online on a website called open.undp.org. So that gives you, this disclosure, this access to information was one of the key recommendations from the UNDP Civil Society Advisory Committee, and we have implemented it. Those principles, as I mentioned, are, they hit the reality very hard sometimes because colleagues don't have time. There are too many requests. Of course, there's for one civil society focal point or youth focal point or SDG focal point in the UN, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of civil society and youth groups out there. In India alone, I think the latest number was there was 500,000 registered NGOs. In countries like maybe Thailand or Vietnam, there are less, But in Indonesia, they are in Philippines, there are 250,000 registered NGOs. So again, you know, it's very hard for UN colleagues to always be available. And we will look at each type of partner a bit more in detail. The last point I made in my slide was about lack of understanding. Unfortunately, not every UN colleague understands those principles and implements them in their projects. So sometimes there's a bit of a misunderstanding about the role of civil society. Maybe they don't really understand what they do, how they work. Is civil society and youth, are they accountable to themselves? What kind of frameworks do they have to be transparent? These kind of things. So, you know, taking this into account is very important when you partner. Understanding what the ideal situation is and where the reality is very important. The second thing I wanted to tell you about today is about the principle of partnerships in the 2030 agenda. So there are many references to engaging and partnering with civil society, and especially youth, in the agenda. I think someone counted, and there are 52 mentions. So sometimes it's mentioned as just civil society, sometimes youth, sometimes specific groups, women, girls, indigenous peoples. It's a bit of a variety. What you need to remember, and this is a point you can make to UN staff or to government people when you meet them, also to private sector, as a matter of fact. The 2030 agenda, the SDGs, is an agenda for everyone. It's an agenda of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is people-centered. So you have a series of paragraphs where it's mentioned. The preamble also mentions that all countries and all stakeholders must act in collaborative partnership to implement this plan. Basically, that's the principle that no one stakeholder, not the government by themselves, not the UN by itself, everyone must participate to make the SDGs a reality and for it to be effective, be effectively implemented at the national and the local level. That's where you as advocates actually come in. That's your edge. That's an added value. That's your tagline. You can go to partners and say, we represent the people. Of course, you were selected among many, I think like 350 applications, but basically you are representing your community. You represent your friends, your family. You represent, your organizations for those of you who are already working. So, you have to really make that point that this is a people-centered agenda, and your work doing SDG advocacy at the local level is a piece of the puzzle. It's to a certain extent, a lot of people would agree, one of the most important piece of the puzzle. If the SDGs remain a policy-making agenda, something that practitioners and technicians work on, in the corridors of the UN, in their offices, behind screens, there will be a disconnect with the people. So you need the people, the citizens, also non-citizens, to really abide and really take on the SDGs as their own. So please make that point when you meet with people. If they ask you, why are you working on this and what's the point? Remind them, this is a people-centered agenda. I put a little publication here at the bottom. You will get the link when you get the presentation. It's a good read if you are interested about the big picture. How does civil society engage in the 2030 agenda? Civil society, again, includes youth. So it will give you some good avenues to understand also leaving no one behind and some principles behind it. So you will receive that link, and I will make sure you'll get it. Let me check again if everything is fine with the sound. If someone can just say, yes, the sound is fine, we can hear you, that'd be great. Nadila, I see you the last one saying, great. If you could just let me know if you can still hear me. Okay, it looks like it's still working. I'm getting the live feed is working perfectly, so it doesn't look like there's any issues. I will continue now with the presentation. The types of partners. So this is, going to be quite a long slide if you go into the details. I will try to give you some tips about each type of partners. UN organizations. So this is me and Christina. This is also our colleague Emilia and Manon from UNV. We are your primary counterparts. So as we're managing your program, so if you have any questions, you know Chi, you know the Facebook group, you know all the processes, refer to the guidebook, and you can always ask questions. As Chi mentioned in the cluster call, there are no stupid questions. Every question is fine. Just be mindful, sometimes we cannot reply in the same day. At the national level, this is what this side is about, who you engage with yourselves. Basically, you have UNDP country offices. Every country in ASEAN has a country office. For those of you, I think, you have, I think, someone in Bangladesh sometimes, and you're going to have someone in Vienna and so on. So for those, it's a bit different. But in ASEAN countries, minus Brunei and Singapore, because they are managed by the Malaysia country office, everyone has a UNDP country office. There will be an email sent either by the end of the year or early next year to send your profiles and send the updated guidebook so that every UNDP country office they are already aware of this initiative. A lot of the advocates have engaged with UNDP country offices and UNV field offices in the past few months already. In Indonesia, I'm thinking about Joss especially because he worked with the UNV field office, but in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in Cambodia. So there's really a lot of the advocates have already been engaging a lot with the UNDP country offices. One very important note is that we are the regional hub and we provide services to the country office. Development takes place at the country, subnational and local level. So we can only advise them. We cannot force anyone in the country office to work with you, unfortunately. So please, some of the principles I will mention later about being patient and so on, please be mindful that they are also very busy. They have their own work plans, their own schedules. Their bosses want specific things and so on. So they will not always be that reactive, but some of them will definitely be. So we will put you in touch. We will inform them about you, the new wave of advocates, and the old one as well. All of you who are active, share your profiles. Share you might be invited to events to be speaking. There might be some opportunities to partner on specific UN days. The last advocates, for instance, organized events for the International Youth Day. They organized events during the International Day for Action on the SDGs, for International Volunteer Day. And there's a range of UN days that are coming up. Please refer to the guidebook. And there will be opportunities to engage with the country offices. That, unfortunately, is true for people who are based in capital cities because that's where our country offices are located. So for those in provinces, if you are in town in the capital city and would like to meet with your other advocates, and if you want to try to meet with the UN together, we can try to help you organize it. But again, there's no guarantee. UNV field offices are not in every country. As a matter of fact, a few months ago, some of the offices were closing down. So I think they only now maybe in 3 or 4 countries. I would like to check with Emilia because I'm not sure which ones. I know Indonesia and Philippines and Vietnam for sure, but I'm not sure about the other. I think maybe Cambodia. I'm not sure. I will check and let you know. And then a bunch of you have also been interacting with the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. So a little bit of background about the UN system. In each country office or in each country setting, I mean, you have each UN agency. Many of the UN agencies have their own field offices. UNICEF will have one often, UNFPA, UNDP is present almost everywhere, UNV sometimes, and there's a coordinating body called the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. There's been a big changes coming up in the past 2 years. They're going to be implemented as of January 2019, and now it used to be with UNDP, and now it's going to be separated. So when you engage with UNDP and when you engage with the RCO, the Resident Coordinator's Office, you're talking to different people. The role of the RCO is to coordinate all the UN activities, to make sure that it's one focal point to discuss with the governments, to negotiate the memorandum of understanding, the contract between the UN and the government, what the UN can work on, in what ways, for how long, what kind of partners, how much money, and so on. So the focal point for all UN agencies in the country is the RCO. And a few of you have engaged with the RCOs, I believe, in Malaysia and in Cambodia. So it is a good tool. Sometimes the RCOs are very open to it, sometimes not so much. I think it depends if we have colleagues who are open to doing SDG advocacy. I think in Laos, I saw Noor is online. So in Laos, the RCO was very open to engage with the advocates. So this might be a good entry point. Now, some of you are working on specific SDGs. So if you're working specifically on gender equality, you should try to engage with UN Women. If you're working specifically on education, it would be UNESCO. So you have to be strategic about who you reach out to. A natural one is, as I mentioned, UNDP, UNV, and sometimes the RCO. But in many cases, if you have a campaign that is very SDG focused, if it's specifically environment, if there's a UNEP country office, then that's who you should be talking to. Gender, you should talk to UN Women. So this program is not about just focusing on the UN co-conveners. Really, we would like to encourage you, and we'll give you some tools to also engage with other UN agencies. So it's a shared agenda. Everyone can help from a different angle. So UNDP also works on gender, also works on environment, but from a sustainable development perspective, which is a bit different. So sometimes your advocacy campaigns can be way more targeted and have way more impact if you partner with UN Women, for instance. If you're doing a gender-based violence advocacy campaign on SDG 5, and you will need to engage with UN Women, and it would make really sense for you to do so because they have gender-specific networks. So when you engage with each partner, and we'll go through it, you have to really think about, added value for them, added value for you, what is the impact, be smart and be strategic about who you are engaging with. I wanted to mention that UNFPA in many countries is a very open-minded agency, UNICEF as well. So if you have a country office for those agencies, you can Google it very easily, type UNFPA Cambodia. I know there is one, and for instance, UNFPA in Cambodia has been responsible for managing the UN interagency network on youth. It was, I think, UNDP for a while was the chairman, but UNFPA has been managing this for quite a while. So depending on your country context, you will have open-minded and very good, your doors will be completely open for you to engage. So you will have to do some kind of assessment, and we will go through what that means in a little bit. The second type of partner are multilateral organizations. I'm mentioning ADB, APEC, ASEF, ASEAN, CMAO because they are based in your respective countries. ADB, of course, in Manila. In Singapore, you have the APEC and the ASEF. ASEAN is based in Indonesia. The Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization is based in Bangkok. So you should do a little bit of research and seeing what kind of other organizations are based in your respective countries. This is very valuable for you, for the advocates among you who are based in capital cities, because it's maybe just a taxi ride or metro ride away. And these can be very good partners. You can meet with them, explain what the program is about, see if there's some overlap. Maybe you can do some joint events. There are really a lot of opportunities. The third type of partner I wanted to mention is embassies and other bilateral donors. So in most of the countries, in general, because it's very hard to really draw trends, and for 10 ASEAN countries, every country has a different strategy for each country, what kind of partnerships they do, what kind of programs they have. So I worked for the French embassy in India, for instance, and I was doing bilateral cooperation and development programs. That was my first job a very long time ago. What I can tell you about it is that embassies are sometimes very good promoters of civic engagement and youth engagement. So again, big trends are in all of these countries in ASEAN. The EU delegation, if you find the civil society, the partnerships, the external communications, external relations focal point, they will be very willing to meet with you. EU delegation, number one, usually. Sweden, Swedish embassies are very open to partnering with youth groups. The Netherlands, France, the UK, and maybe a bit less true right now, but the US used to be, and through USAID especially, used to be a very big funder of civic engagement initiatives. We have seen this in many countries, including in Thailand, in Cambodia, throughout ASEAN, in the Philippines. You have a lot of programs that are funded by the embassies. So they are very good partners, and especially for your fundraising initiatives, it's very important to engage them. In a little bit, we'll talk about the funding cycles and how each partner has different funding cycles, and for you to know them is very important. We'll talk about it in a bit. Embassies is, beside UN and all the multilateral organizations, the first three, basically, it's very important for you to be very formal. These are organizations that are based on protocol. They are diplomats, and they're expecting a lot of, they're very hierarchical, and they're expecting that you would like really be formal. So we will look at a practical example in a bit to tell you how to be formal with those organizations. It's very important to be respectful of their time. When you communicate with them, be clear, be polite, be respectful, be patient. This is very important. Private sector is another type of partner that you can engage with. This is maybe, in terms of scale, in terms of difficulty, this is one of the hardest one, including the UN has issues sometimes partnering with the private sector because they have their own vision, their own mandate, their own ways of working, their own business practices. So you can do some kind of research if you'd like. We have started mapping a lot of like the potential opportunities for you, including at the country level. I will share an Excel table with some of those that we have identified. It's a bit outdated, but it will guide you. The problem with the private sector is that this is a partnership that is often very time-consuming and requires a lot of effort. So it might make sense if you do an analysis in your stakeholder analysis. If you look at private sector, really take the top three. Which are the partners from the private sector that make total sense for your project, for your advocacy initiative? So if it's on a specific SDG, I don't know. If it's, I think one of you is working on beat plastic pollution, right? Is it, I can't remember if it's Nadila. So this is a great initiative, but you can maybe find some private sector companies who has a specific CSR, corporate social responsibility program, or maybe even some of the private sector have SDG related programs. So one good tool, for instance, to know in your countries which ones are the top private sector companies working on SDGs is the website from the UN Global Compact. I will try to show you the website right now. And I hope my screen is not going to do something funny. Let's try. Let's see if it will work. Here we go. I'm checking on YouTube if it's working. Let's see. I'm trying to show you the page. Yes, it is working. Amazing. So this website is really good. You can filter by country. So each one of you can check. Cambodia is here, and you have all the ASEAN countries pretty much. The type of initiatives. So there are like some specific SDG focused ones, some generalist ones, anti-corruption, depending what kind of like topics you work on. And one interesting thing here is that you can filter by sector. So one sector that I think you should look at, and Chen, our intern, has been working on looking at it, is the one on, where is it? Construction, automobiles, is the one, yes. Mobile telecommunications, I think, is a very good entry point for advocates in your respective countries. So in Cambodia, it would be Smart. In Thailand, it would be True Mobile. I don't know all the names of the mobile telecommunications companies in your respective countries, but you can click on this and then see in specific countries. So you see how many there are? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. Let's say I want to say a specific country. In China, well, the program doesn't currently work in China, but these two companies have worked with the UN on implementing the SDGs. They have joint programs and they have been working together for a long time. So if you filter by your country, maybe there's none, sorry, but there might be, you can check. And those companies are very good starting points, for instance, for the Advocates program. One thing you can imagine is maybe having a partnership for them to, share the survey through mobile phones. The same way sometimes the National Election Commission sends you this mass SMS. Well, maybe the survey can be shared in that way. So if you want to engage with the private sector, it is time-consuming, it's hard, but previous advocates have started doing it, and some of them might be successful in the next few months. So, you should try, but first be very mindful about which partner and how you partner. And I would really recommend to keep it to a small number, maximum 3 private sector partners that you can list in your strategy. The next type of partner is civil society organizations and youth groups. Here again, that's part of your stakeholder analysis. We're going to talk about it in a little bit, but these are the 2 most natural partners that you can have. You should map, you should really identify who are the key organizations in your respective countries working on the SDGs. This can be done very easily. So CSOs is a very bold concept. In all of your countries, you have NGO platforms. You have, so in Cambodia, it's called CCCC. You have, in Thailand, you have one as well, in Vietnam. All of the countries have an NGO platform, which is membership-based, and a lot of NGOs are usually members. So you can get in touch with your respective NGO platforms. That would be a good start. Then you can do a search. Which are the top NGOs working on SDG implementation? Where are easy partnership? And I can guarantee you that a lot of those would be very happy to work with you because they have an issue with representation. And you as an advocate, bringing your own networks, bringing your own communities, bringing local voice and local grassroots action really gives them legitimacy. And they would be really, it would be like a good way to partner. Our youth groups are also natural partners. Here, you know, previous advocates have had like a lot of partners from youth groups. This is highly encouraged. If you can also get other youth groups excited about the SDGs, if they can help you in your advocacy campaigns online, on social media, by sharing on Facebook, that's great. If they can organize jointly your handover event, you can have other organizations, other youth groups being, you know, co-conveners, co-organizers of your events. So be creative. There's no limitations on the number. Just be mindful that the more partners you have, the harder it is to manage. So, you know, think about impact. Think about the ones that have a large following on social media. Think about the ones who have big numbers of members, and so on. In a lot of your countries, I would like to mention the 2030 Youth Force. Some of you, Jules and Whiskey, Jules in the Philippines and Whiskey in Indonesia, are part of this network that was also managed and is still managed by UNDP Bangkok Regional Hub and UNV. This is a great opportunity for all of you to engage with the 2030 Youth Force. There is no competition between the advocates and the 2030 Youth Force. There is complete overlap. So don't hesitate to really engage with the 2030 Youth Force. The last type of partner that I wanted to mention today, of course, there are many more, but you know, I wanted to focus on a few. Media and social media influencers are very important, I think, especially for your online advocacy initiatives. You should try to have maybe in your strategy a section about public figures, social media influencers, YouTubers and Instagrammers that have a lot of followers and then can maybe do something very simple. What you ask them to do is just maybe take a picture or a video of themselves and share it with their groups and their followers and their networks, just saying, I voted on the My World survey, have you? Here's the link. You know, something that simple can have a massive impact and can really increase the number of votes. So if you share your own partner ID and your own link, that will really help you. And I believe a lot of advocates in Indonesia and Malaysia have used the social media influencers to get the good numbers they had since June. So really think about mapping potential connections with the media, potential social media influencers. On Twitter, you can tweet at them. On Instagram, you can also, you know, tag them in some way. Don't hesitate to think big. You know, on social media, as long as you're not insulting anyone, you know, everyone would be. Some people might just be very willing to, you know, to share your survey, so your link of the survey. So really think about, be creative, and don't, you know, there's no shame. What the worst that can happen is they say no, or the worst that can happen is they don't answer to you. But you know, the more you try, the higher the impact. Let me go to the next slide, and this is about stakeholder analysis. And I still have quite a way to go, so I'm gonna have to go speed up a little bit. Stakeholder analysis is very basic. You can find a lot of information online. I put one link here at the bottom. This is a tool used by all development practitioners. You should learn it. This will be helpful if you work in NGOs, if you work in government, if you work in the private sector in the future. Everyone should be doing stakeholder analysis. What it means, basically, it's a technique to understand the connections, the networks, how people are related to each other and influence each other. It's a basic tool. You know, you can do it step by step, or you can do it like as a big map, if you like, really looking who is working on your issues around you. Who are the type of partners working on your issues? What do they want? What are the main needs of these partners? And once you understand what they really want, it really helps you, do the partnership, because when you talk to them, then you'll be more specific and you'll be more targeted. And when you engage with anyone, you have to be clear, you have to be concise, you have to be very specific about what you want. So really understanding what their needs are and understanding your own needs and your own vision, then you can match and you can really find a middle ground, find consensus, what I was talking about earlier. The next step is assessing and analyzing stakeholders' interest and influence. That's very important because it will help you prioritize. As I mentioned, there are so many partners out there, you have to select. Among UN organizations, depending on the SDG you focus on, you have to select. Private sector, you have to select. Every partner you engage with, you cannot engage with, don't open 100 doors if you're not planning to close them. It's better to engage in a qualitative way rather in a quantitative way. Don't engage with too many, you will lose track. A good tip is to actually create a table, see, if you have volunteers around you, if you're working as part of an organization, have a table with the list of people you are emailing, what date you receive the answer, what are the follow-up actions, maybe a little bit about the organization and their key needs and so on. So really think about, it's better to do little and do it well rather than like have many email chains and you don't follow up, then you don't really look serious. So really think about the top impact, the top influences, and try to understand what their interests are and where you can find common ground. Managing stakeholders' expectations, very important. If you start an email conversation and you don't follow up, people lose interest in you and don't think you're very serious. And in this field, development, everyone knows everyone. Everybody's connected. And so there are some networks. And if you start having a bad reputation, people will know about you. So, again, better to manage the expectations with fewer partners rather than creating crazy expectations and then disappointing partners. Better to have a few and doing better. Taking actions is a very important part of the stakeholder analysis process. Is once you've done all of this analysis and gathered all the information and intelligence, you have to act. So start sending an email. There's a slide specifically on this, so I will talk about it in just a bit. There's specific things you can do. What it looks like in practice, I think it's the next slide actually. No, it's right here. I will talk about it in a bit. And then the very important last part of the stakeholder analysis is reviewing your progress, understanding where you're at with the partners, and doing this whole process all over again, because information becomes outdated very quickly, and so you have to really keep up to date. Again, the website I shared here will be shared with you, and you can have a look a bit more in detail. Those steps, I would like to mention the stakeholder analysis and understand your partners should not overtake the actual action. So, the analysis part should be, maybe I would say 10, 15, 20% of your time, and actually starting the partnership, starting the conversation, building trust. That's the bulk of the partnership. And at the end, there's a very important part called thank you, and we really appreciate your support. And there's like this whole closing partnership. So once you're done with a partner, you really thank them for the interaction, even if it wasn't something small, even if a partner just gave you $100 to produce a few flyers. Every partner needs to be thanked. So the analysis is a small part, a very important foundation for your work, engaging with partners, but it should not take over the actual action, the partnership themselves. Let me talk about, in practice, what it means. I've skipped the added value because I'm going to talk it in a little bit more in detail. But in practice, and I know for some of you, this is repetitive and you already know this, so I will go over this very, very quickly. Before the meeting, when you reach out to someone, you need to be prepared. You need to be have your information collected, maybe have a one-pager with your basic information. You need to be clear about what you want from the partner. You need to be clear, respectful, polite. You can send an email. If they don't reply in a few days, you can send another email. Sometimes you can get a partner of a partner to be introduced to you. You can use your networks. So there are multiple ways you can create connection, people-to-people connection. But you have to be ready. Before you start engaging with partners, you have to be ready. That's how this program was designed, a preparation phase of 6 weeks where you do all the trainings, get the cluster calls, ask all your questions, build your skills, and draft your strategy. Chi specifically mentioned, I should remind you, that your strategy are due, I think, by the end of this week, and you should send it to Chi for her review and my review by the end of this year. And then only once you've got your strategy in place, it will come naturally when you're going to meet with partners. They're going to see you're very serious. You have a plan. You have objectives. You know who you want to talk to. You know the kind of initiatives you're going to do. So the strategy is very, very important, and I encourage you to all work on it. It can be either individually or it could be as a group, usually group within a country. The format, I believe Chi told you about it in the cluster call, is flexible, and we can help you fine-tune it once we receive it, and we can ask you follow-up questions to guide you in the right direction. But have a look at the guidebook, pages 14 and 15. You have a bunch of guiding questions, and they will help you with your first draft of the strategy. Once people have agreed to meet with you in person, again, it's very important to be on time, be presentable, be well-dressed, have your material. Maybe not everything needs to be printed out because we're trying to be environmental friendly, but at least the basic information in one sheet. And very importantly, you need to present yourself very clearly. You say who you are, who are you affiliated with, who are your partners. You can say that this is a program by UNDP and UNV and SDG Action Campaign. You can mention us, no problem. But you have to be clear about what you want from the partner. So before the meeting, again, very important preparation phase before the meeting, the 5 key things that you would like from the partner. And it's not demanding, it's kindly asking if they would be willing to do this. So it could be maybe a small financial support. It could be a range of things. It could be giving you a space to organize your event. It could be proposing a speaker, a UN speaker or another speaker that can speak on the SDGs at your event. There's a range of non-financial things that partner can also do, but you have to be clear so that the partner knows exactly what your expectations are. And the clearer you are, the more likely the partnerships will be successful. After the meeting, always send a follow-up email and a thank you email. Every partner's time and efforts are highly valuable. They are choosing to speak with you among thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of potential partners. So really try to be respectful of their time and their efforts, and sending a follow-up email, so saying thank you, and following up very importantly on the key action points that were agreed upon during the meeting. That's very important. So at the end of the meeting, in the in-person bullet here, you can maybe ask the partner to summarize the list of items that you agreed upon. That might help you also organize yourself, and that will help you for sending a follow-up email after the meeting. I'll go back to your added value slide, because this is a very important one. I mentioned this at the beginning. It's a people-centered agenda, and you as an advocate, you can support the work of the partners in many multiple ways. Here are 5 ways that I listed that you can do this. You can tell them about SDG solutions. I think it was Token in Thailand/Myanmar is designing an event, and he's got a game called the SDG Pyramid. It's a way to prioritize SDGs, a very simple tool. I don't think a lot of UN organizations use this. So, Whiskey and Jules, SDG caravans, SDG board games, SDG roadshow, SDG TV host, 2030 TV show. There's all these tools that you're actually using, and they're very creative. So don't underestimate the power of the work that you're doing. It can be very valuable to a host of partners. There are maybe some connections that they didn't think about, some networks that you have, reach. Maybe you can. Some of you have very strong communities, and especially you're working with vulnerable groups. Thinking about Whiskey and working with LGBT. Some of you are working with rural communities. There's really a lot of comparative advantage that you can sell to the partner. Sounding board, that's a very important one. Maybe they can bounce ideas off you. You can act as an advisor. Of course, if you do that, you spend your time doing that, you can, potentially have something in exchange, right? You shouldn't be participating in meetings or advisory panels that take a lot of your time without the partner also supporting you in some ways. But that's one way you can be useful to a lot of partners. Expert resource, I think, I mentioned this. All of you have very varied profiles. Some of you are social entrepreneurs. 5 of you are social entrepreneurs, Kat in Thailand, and, many others. You have expertise. So of course, as I work on policy and partnerships, I have some expertise, but it's a UN point of view. You have your own set of expertise and know-how and local knowledge that you can also sell to your partners. Don't underestimate yourself. You have a lot to bring to a lot of partners, despite the imbalance of power, and you really don't underestimate yourself. That's my message. Advocacy, networks, your social media feed, your Twitter accounts, your Facebook. Please refer to the training webinar that you had with both Gayan and Christina. There were a lot of tips. Those online and offline networks that you have are also of value to the partner. I think you should also think, that's my last point, thinking about not necessarily you can work on your own on certain initiatives, but I would also encourage you to build rapport with the other advocates in your country. It's always more powerful to say we rather than I. That's my last point. So I was going to say, you can mention that you are part of a national team. There are other, except in Laos, there are other team members in your country. So you don't work by yourself. There are other people in other provinces or in other cities. You work with other advocates ASEAN-wide, with in entire 10 countries. And let me remind you that you also work as a part of a global movement. This is the SDG Action Campaign's Act for SDG hashtag, right? And the My World 2030. There are millions of people and hundreds of thousands of partners out there also doing the work that you're doing, specifically on SDG advocacy and local actions. So you are part of not just your own initiative. You are really embedded into this kind of global movement. They're working in Africa, Latin America. Every single region does not have an advocates program. You're the first region, but every region has a lot of similar work that you're doing. So, you're not alone. That's what I want you to emphasize when you talk to the partners. You're part of a network, and you get support from the UN in this respect. I am going to check on YouTube quickly that everything is fine and you can hear me. Let's see. Anyone wants to maybe say again that this is working and everything is fine? I'm by myself, so it's a bit hard to juggle to check that it's working properly. Let me wait a second to see. Yes, all is well. Thank you, Joss. I appreciate that you're very responsive. What do donors want from you? They want you. The few questions that when you're working at an embassy, or you're working at the UN, or you're working in any position, I guess, of power, is you want to know that the person that you're going to spend time with is serious, and you want to make sure that they're going to not waste your time. You want to check that your mandate is aligned, that you have a similar vision, that you have the same kind of objectives, that there's some overlap. What will they gain? What is their win from engaging with you? That's where the added value side is very important. You really have to emphasize that. Then they would like to know what's your past achievements. So past actions are big indicators of future actions. So if you have good initiatives that you've done, maybe you have a few slides, maybe you have a one-pager explaining the kind of things you've already done. How many events have you organized in your university? How many people were there? They want to know that you understand impact and results. What that means is, it's not necessarily the number of events or the number of people that you have talked to. It's more, you've raised advocacy is such a fuzzy term. It means a lot of things. What donors want to know is that you're serious, that you understand that the work that you're doing is, you're not looking at just 20 people. You're looking at 1,000 people. You're collecting the votes because you understand that those votes feed into a larger process, and that there's work done by UN and other actors to showcase the votes at big milestones. So for us, for instance, it's the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development in March. So the partners, they want to understand that you're serious, that you understand what's going on, that you have done a stakeholder mapping, that you have a strategy, that you're organized, that you're responsive, that you have some kind of understanding of monitoring and evaluation. So you are able to look at your own work and reflect and learn from your own mistakes. All of this is very important for donors. When people entrust you with their money, there is a responsibility that comes with it. And showing seriousness, a strategy, or everything I mentioned before, will really help donors trust you and believe in you. So it's very important that you understand, what they want. I added a link at the bottom about it's 6 things nonprofit donors want. I mean, this is a good list. It explains, a little bit also about donors have also their own reporting. So when you give money, you have to explain why you gave that much money and how it was spent and what was the impact. So they want you to be clear. They want whatever you're going to do to make a difference. They want to be heroes. That's how it's phrased in this link. They want to feel connection. So feel a personal connection with you. If someone likes you, likability is such an important thing. If someone likes you, they're more willing to trust you and they're more willing to support you. And transparency. So if you spend money, you just give account about how you spent it, and visibility. Donors also want to see, their logos are on all your promotional material, on your banners, on your flyers, on your social media. So giving visibility to your donors is a big way of saying thank you. And as I mentioned, irrespective of how much they support you, financially, non-financially, always say thank you. Even the smallest contribution should be thanked. Fundraising step by step. So this is a lot of information here. A lot of it was already covered in the previous slides. I thought I would maybe put it into one slide so you can really understand it, and you can use this slide for your strategy and for your fundraising strategy especially. So understanding your own strength, understanding the networks you have, really looking at how many volunteers are around you, what kind of networks you can tap into, are they offline, are they online, spelling out your added value, was a slide specifically on this, understanding your partners, so that's the stakeholder analysis, understanding the environment in which we operate, very important. Some key trends I can mention to you about the funding environment for civil society and youth groups is that it's declining, that some of the donors' requirements are more strict. They want to have more information about your impact on your results. They are hurdles. They create forms and questionnaires and survey responses. But this is all part of the donors' requirements. And while they are sometimes time-consuming and cumbersome and sometimes annoying, if the donor requests it, you have to abide, because there's this transparency and accountability principle that you really need to abide to. Developing a vision, your value proposition, that's part of your strategy. You have to determine your key objectives. Again, refer to the guidebook, pages 14 and 15. A lot of the questions you should ask yourselves are available there. And I'm going to look at now the next few slides are about opportunities and fundraising opportunities in practice. So who are the funders out there and where can you find information about them? So all of the following will be, again, shared with you. So you will have all the links that you can see on this slide. I ordered the specialized website for funding opportunities in 4 ways. They have different purposes. So you look at different databases in a different way. If you look at chronological order, I think Funds for NGOs is a very good resource. It compiles the majority of available grants and fundraising pools out there, funding pools out there. So it's really has a bunch of guides that you can use. They have a lot of information, webinars, and a calendar with deadlines. So using this one, I think the first one, Funds for NGOs, is a very good tool for you guys to browse through, understanding what kind of grants out there, what kind of the deadlines and so on. So it's ordered chronologically. So it will tell you which ones are coming up now and which ones are coming up later. And if you do a fundraising plan or fundraising strategy, you can use this one to see which ones are the priority. So the ones coming sooner that are exactly matching your criteria and you fit the criteria, then that's the ones you should apply first, obviously. The second kind is region specific. Here I only listed Asia Pacific. So you have one specifically on ASEAN, one specific for Asia, that's from the ADA, Asia Development Alliance. And then there's one called the Asia Pacific Philanthropy Consortium. So all of those are very good databases. You can browse, you can select, you can filter, you can see per country, you can see, you know, they are really well done, sub-regional sometimes, so they are ASEAN-wide, South Asia. There's really a lot out there. And again, I think maybe the ASEAN funding opportunities and the Pro Donor database, I think are two very good ones. And of course, the ADA, the Asia Development Alliance, has also a lot of good stuff. I would encourage you, if you can, to register for their newsletters. For all of these opportunities, you can get all the information to your email. Maybe some of you will think it's spam. I browse through it and I look at it. When I've been posting, for instance, in your group, that's what I've been using. I've been looking at those regularly. I get like emails. The last one, Opportunity Desk, is for young people on Facebook. So when I've been sharing opportunities with you, that's where it comes from one of those hyperlinks here. Thematic issue, sometimes they're organized by thematic issue. The Ford Foundation Grants Database is, I believe, the best one, the most comprehensive. You have sustainable development, governance, environment, anti-corruption. There's a range of issues in there, and you can really filter very easily, and it's very comprehensive. Some of them are worldwide, and you know, but you'd be surprised how much when you work in New York. Ford Foundation is based in New York. I've met with Ford Foundation many times. They often say they don't have that many applicants from Asia and ASEAN countries in particular. So if you look at all of these opportunities and you see one that you fit perfectly, you fit all the criteria, you should apply, because there are opportunities out there. Sometimes it seems very serious or maybe out of reach, but I can guarantee you, you'll be surprised. Sometimes there are opportunities that are actually quite open. So it's not all big NGOs. It's not Greenpeace getting all the funds, right? There's also funds for smaller grassroots initiatives. The last one that I organize it by constituency, or what I call forms of civic organizing, are more like, you know, youth, LGBT, women focused. I think there are some more out there that you can look into. There must be some, if you're working on indigenous rights, databases specifically for that. This slide is not comprehensive, but I think it really is a big avenue for you to know where to find opportunities. Register for their newsletters, follow them on Twitter, like their Facebook pages, and get the information sent to you automatically. That's the way I do it, and sometimes it's too much information. But if you have to choose one, just one opportunity, join the Opportunity Desk on Facebook. That's #1 for you. There are always youth opportunities listed every day, sometimes several times a day. So for you, if you have to choose one, Opportunity Desk on youth, that's the best. A tool I wanted to tell you about, and I know it's already 9 p.m., I'm starting to run out of time, I'm almost done, is this table. It's an Excel table that was compiled last year. It's a bit outdated, but it will give you a very good overview of the previous. So basically looking at all the opportunities, this table compiles it and organizes it. So you can filter by the type of funding organization, the kind of like focus. So do they work on political participation, LGBT, youth civic engagement, geographic focus? Is it Asia Pacific? Is it specific countries? What countries is it? Is it ASEAN? Then what target groups, what groups they actually want to give the grants to. Here you can actually filter and put youth organization, and it will help you. Then I try to organize this. I worked on this with many UN volunteers. So this is a group team effort. The amount of grant, and then the funding cycle. What is the deadline and how frequent it is. So this table will be shared with you on the Facebook group. It is an internal UNDP document, so I would ask you to not share it with the world, but among advocates and your volunteer groups, it's all fine. The 2030 Youth Force already has this tool shared with them previously, so it is public, but don't share it with the entire world either. The frequency, you will see, sometimes it's 3 times a year, sometimes it's only on a yearly basis, so you have to look here. This table is as of 2017, I believe December 2017, but it's a lot of those grants are on a cyclical manner. So even though this table is a bit outdated, you will see that a lot of those still apply. And then you can filter based on the topics that you have interest in, or the type of partner. Is it bilateral donor? Is it other philanthropic associations, and so on? Private sector, there's a few as well. And you can filter and maybe find 1 or 2 that are going to be working for your fundraising opportunities. Build your skills. That's the last slide for today. It's a list of toolkits, webinars, publications, about how to do this in, how to learn. I mean, this is only 1 hour and 5 minutes that we spent together. There's so much you can learn about the specifics about fundraising, grant seeking. Writing a proposal is a specific skill. One thing we can share with you, actually, I prepared it for you, and it's been shared with the previous advocates, is, I'm going to share it with you now, is the partner's letter. This is going to be available to you. You can tailor it and send it to any partner. You just make sure the blue blank spaces are filled in. So make sure it's like a nice letter. You personalize and you be very respectful. Dear madam, dear sir, dear mister. And then it explains in a very basic language what the advocates program is, how it works. And then here you have a paragraph where you can explain the kind of support you are seeking. So here you have to be specific. You should have, when you're reaching out, you should have at least 2 things that you want from the partner, and up to, I would say, 5. Don't have more than 5, because then you're in the first letter, it's a bit much. But this letter is a template, and you will be allowed to tailor it and use it for your own purposes. And this is going to be made available to you. So that's a template that's going to be used. Going back to the list, grant seeking, introduction to stakeholder analysis, what kind of grants, funds, fellowships, good practices, smart fundraising. There's a lot of online fundraising. I didn't talk about it much today, but you can do a lot of online fundraising as well. This one from the Network for Good, I think, is a very good one on online fundraising checklist. So all of these toolkits are, I believe, free of charge. You can access them by clicking on it, and again, it will be shared with you. And I hope that all of these were very useful. I'm going to go now to the YouTube and see if you have specific questions. Given I talked so much, I hope maybe we can take 10 minutes for questions. And of course, if you have follow-up questions or if there were things that were not clear, you can always send an email. This is my email. And before I take the questions, remember, everyone, patience. Patience is very important. Maybe sometimes the partners will not reply to you, or there will be delays, and it takes time. So you have to build trust, build rapport, likability. They need to believe and trust in you and like you to support you. So be patient. And a lot of the advocates started, and you have another 6 months now until May to make it work for you. So I would encourage you to start as soon as possible, sending out partners letter, raising your networks and so on, and hopefully you can fundraise very soon. Let me go to YouTube and see if you have any specific questions, and I will try to answer to the best of my ability. Okay, 1 second. Let's see if this works. Okay, I stop sharing my screen. Hello, everyone. This is me. You can see my face now. Okay. Oh, this is doing something weird. Here we go. I know it was a lot of information, so I'm browsing, going up to see if there's any questions. I don't see any so far. Kimari, is there a sample of proposal of fundraising? Yes, in the slides I shared with you, there's a lot of samples available. So I don't think there's one format that you should specifically use. I can maybe select one that I think would work for you, Kimari, more than others. I would say the simpler, the better. Your strategy would be a very good attachment. If you're making a fundraising proposal, a lot of the elements of your strategy are also what should be in your fundraising proposal. To a certain extent, a strategy and a fundraising proposal is almost the same document. There's a large overlap between the two. And you will see that when I share the template with you guys, you will see how much the fundraising proposal should have, for instance, what are the objectives of your initiative? Who is involved? What kind of networks do you have? What kind of reach? What are the initiatives? Explanation of each initiative, timeline, calendar. So all of this should also be in your strategy that you're preparing with Chi and Chen and myself. So to a certain extent, once you prepare your strategy and you go through the motions and you work collaboratively with maybe people in your country and for you, Cambodia, once you have your strategy, it will really, really help you. Most of the information for your fundraising proposal will be the same. I hope that helped. And I will share a template. Anyone else? Any other questions? Take your time. Let me see, maybe there are some in the Facebook group. Let's have a look. Let's have a look if there's questions on the Facebook group. Nope. I'm still waiting for questions, guys, so let me know. I'm going to check in my email if I have questions. I'm going to check on Skype if I have questions. Tutu, you have a question about are there deadlines for the campaign and for collecting votes? So, so this is not, a competition. Everyone take your own time to collect your votes. I think, you should start collecting votes online via social media already now. You should start finalizing your strategy very soon, reaching out to partners. All of these things you can start doing already now. There's no deadline for the campaign. Even the program is not a deadline for your SDG campaign. For us, we have a few milestones coming up. It's March, because there's going to be 2 big events in March taking place about the same time. I know there are a lot of ISACers among you. For those who don't know, ISAC is the largest youth organization in the world. And I think about 4 or 5 advocates. Noor in Laos, there was Michelle in Malaysia, and more are from ISAC. And we are partnering officially for the Asia Pacific conference taking place in March. So that's kind of like the first deadline for us to collect your votes and analyze them. The second one is taking place at the very end of March, is the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. So that's another deadline. That would be nice if we can collect. The more votes we have by then, the better. And then the SDG Action Campaign also has a big deadline. They have their Act for SDGs. Their global day of action is taking place in the first few days of May. You may have seen, if you have followed Christina and Gayan's information in their webinars, if you have followed their Facebook page, their Twitter accounts, that they have posted about this. So the Global Day for Action on the SDGs is going to take place in the beginning of May. So to that extent, the deadline is first in March. We're going to have a first look at the vote in March, and then again in May. And the program ends mid-May, where you're expected to send your final report. There will be a survey to collect all the information, because as I mentioned throughout this webinar, it's very important to assess and collect information, evaluate how it went. So all the work that you've been doing, if you don't send us the information, it will not be reflected, and we will not be able to show it to our partner governments in Bangkok at the APFSD or the SDG Action Campaign in all the events they're attending. Right now, SDG Action Campaign, they're in Katowice for COP24. So there are all these events taking place, and our commitment to you, so you're doing all this work, but our commitment to you is that your voice will not be silent. We will make sure that the work you do is featured. It's, for instance, in September, there was a video about the ASEAN My World program shown in New York on the margins of the UN General Assembly in the SDG media zone. So there's all these efforts to really make sure that the work that you do, the vote that you collect, the Humans of My World stories that you write, that all the partnerships that you create, the handover events, all of these are amplified. So to make sure, no deadline, hopefully you will also continue doing your advocacy work beyond the program. I hope the program will make you motivated to talk about the SDGs, sustainable development in your family, friends, communities, beyond the program. So in general, I guess no deadline. All right, thank you, Nadira, for your word of confidence. I'm very happy to share my knowledge with you. Any other questions? I will wait another 2 minutes, and if there are no other questions, I guess I'm gonna wrap it up. And as I mentioned, you can email me for the follow-up. Please give me 2 days so that I have the time to compile all the information, but the PPT presentation is already going to be available, I guess, either tonight or tomorrow morning. So if there's no other questions, I would like to thank you for all of you watching. I hope the recording will work properly, and good luck with your strategies. Don't hesitate to get in touch with Chi, and all of us at UNV SDG Action Campaign, we're here to support you, and you're really doing a good job. So congratulations to you, and keep up the hard work. So this is it for me today, and I'm saying goodbye. And again, very happy to be able to share my knowledge with you today. Bye, everyone.